Each year, upon graduating from various medical schools throughout the world, new physicians swear an oath. There have been many tweaks and updates, but generally it consists of many of the tenets contained in the classic version of the Hippocratic Oath and promises, "I will keep them from harm and injustice, or never to act contrary to the laws of humanity." Most of us boil it down to first, do no harm. The following doctors, however, did not keep their sworn promises on graduation day. Here are my top 3 diabolical doctors. Number 3, Dr. Mark Weinberger. By all rights, Mark Weinberger could have been anything. He was ambitious, handsome, charming, and educated. Born in 1963, he had grown up in a privileged home. His grandmother's recipe for chopped liver became both famous and lucrative, and the Weinberger family prospered. After graduating cum laude from the University of Pennsylvania, the physician later known as the nose doctor beat out close to 100 other applicants for a prestigious fellowship at the University of Illinois in Chicago. Mark had earned a reputation as a skilled, compassionate doctor, so his colleagues and mentors could never have imagined that this talented surgeon, once devoted to serving his patients, would one day end up a fugitive. In 2004, Mark and Michelle Cramer, the third Mrs. Weinberger, by the way, took a romantic trip to Greece to celebrate Michelle's 30th birthday. There was nothing unusual about an impromptu trip abroad for this glamorous couple. Mark was by now an ear, nose, and throat specialist of wide renown, and his sinus clinic in Merrillville, Indiana, was booming. The Weinbergers enjoyed an extravagant, heady lifestyle. By 2004, however, their relationship, once solid, was now strained thanks to a looming malpractice suit that had been filed by the family of a patient who had died under Weinberger's care. Phyllis Barnes was 47 years old when she visited Weinberger's posh sinus clinic in 2001. She worked as a recruiter, assisting displaced steelworkers in securing new employment. But for the past few months, she had been experiencing breathing problems and persistent coughing spells. A colleague referred her to Dr. Weinberger, who diagnosed her with sinus issues, namely polyps. It should be noted that later interviews with patients of Weinberger's clinic revealed that nearly all of them were diagnosed with polyps and a deviated septum, which, according to the doctor, required costly surgeries, along with the resulting fees that lined his pockets. He frequently examined more than 100 patients each day, meaning he saw each of them for under 5 minutes. In the end, it was revealed that Mrs. Barnes was suffering from throat cancer when she sought Weinberger's diagnosis. Her lawyer argued that if she had been properly diagnosed, her life could have been saved. However, she succumbed to the disease in September 2004, having filed her lawsuit against Weinberger 2 years earlier. Upon her death, a 3-person panel of physicians found the nose doctor negligent in his treatment of Phyllis Barnes. Additional lawsuits followed. According to wife Michelle, who back then was studying for her PhD in psychology, the stress of the litigation had taken its toll on her husband, leaving him edgy, anxious, and paranoid. When she suffered a miscarriage a few months later, he was distant and detached. Co-workers also noted a drastic change in Weinberger's demeanor and appearance and came to fear him. He kept company with some shady characters and began to store boxes and boxes of camping and survival gear at his medical office. 2 days after the death of Phyllis Barnes, Mark, Michelle, and a few loved ones set off to Greece for the birthday trip. Mark had arranged for the Cordy Seas, a yacht stationed out of Athens, to be waiting for them in Mykonos. He and Michelle, following a heated argument during the group celebration dinner, went to sleep aboard the yacht. When she awoke at 6 a.m., he was gone. She assumed he went running, but could not locate her husband throughout the day. By afternoon, the yacht's captain told Michelle the doctor had taken a side trip to Paris to pick up diamonds he had purchased for her birthday. By nightfall, the captain finally conceded he had lied and that Weinberger was gone. Following one quick phone call where he accidentally picked up, Weinberger then hung up and never spoke to his wife again. Happy birthday. That's cold. Mark took off with the camping and survival equipment, which he had arranged to be shipped to Greece, and he left Michelle with $6 million worth of debt. Both she and his father, also shafted by the disgraced surgeon, went on to file for bankruptcy. In 2005, Weinberger's medical license was revoked, and he was indicted in absentia by a federal grand jury for healthcare fraud. He was eventually featured on America's Most Wanted 3 years later. By then, more than 350 malpractice suits had been filed against him, including one case citing that he had needlessly operated on an 8-year-old girl whose sinuses had not fully matured yet. It turned out she had a brain tumor he had not detected. Meantime, the nose doctor was skiing, in the Alps with an Italian woman, reportedly transgender, who fell in love with the disgraced doctor in 2009. Her friend had seen the America's Most Wanted episode and alerted Monica Spicogna to the real identity of her then-boyfriend. Monica struggled with her decision, explaining Weinberger loved her and accepted her for who she was. But ultimately, she contacted authorities, who arrested the doctor in a tent where he was hiding out in the Italian Alps. He attempted to commit suicide by stabbing himself in the neck, but he was unsuccessful. He was returned to the U.S., where he pled guilty to 22 counts of healthcare fraud. In October 2012, he was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison, but served just 5. Now 58, Weinberger is currently living in West Palm Beach with wife number 4 and 2 children. It's reported that he promotes a yoga lifestyle online. Number 2, Dr. Anthony Garcia. Dr. Anthony Joseph Garcia was licensed to practice medicine in the state of Illinois. This came as a surprise to many in the medical community, however, given the troubled past and controversy attached to the doctor. Before working as a physician with elderly patients in Chicago, Dr. Garcia had flunked out of 4 residencies. Ironically, this included a stint at the University of Illinois in Chicago, where the doctor in our previous story had shined. The start of Dr. Garcia's troubles, it seems, took root in Nebraska. There at Creighton University in Omaha, Garcia did little to make friends and influence people. While he would later be described as caring and compassionate with his patients, he was deemed arrogant, lazy, and condescending by most of his peers. Still, even those who disliked him would not likely have guessed that he would end up on death row, charged with the revenge murders of 4 people. In 2008, the town of Omaha, Nebraska was shocked by the murders of an 11-year-old boy and a housekeeper inside the home owned by Bill and Claire Hunter, both doctors with ties to Creighton University Medical Center. Thomas Hunter, age 11, was their son, and Shirley Sherman, a grandmother of 5, maintained the home for the Hunter family. Both had been stabbed to death. Investigators were stumped. There was no robbery, no motive they could determine for the crime. The killer had left no DNA, just a whole lot of fear, grief, and unanswered questions. On Mother's Day 2013, and just 6 miles away, officers were called to a similar scene when Dr. Roger Brumback and his wife Mary were found slain in their Omaha home. He had been shot in the doorway, then stabbed. She sustained defensive knife wounds and had also been brutally stabbed. There was no evidence, no motive, but there was a trail leading back to Creighton. The same 2 investigators on the Hunter-Sherman crime scene 5 years earlier were assigned to the Brumback homicides. Both detectives were struck immediately by an eerie familiarity between the 2 crime scenes, including the victims' wounds. Soon their investigation revealed that Dr. Brumback had worked in the same lab at Creighton as Dr. Bill Hunter, whose young son had been murdered in his home. In the interim, they also learned that another doctor from the Creighton Medical School, a Dr. Shanda Butra, had reported a break-in at the home she shared with her husband, also a doctor affiliated with Creighton. The couple had been out celebrating Mother's Day with friends, one of whom had a walker and was moving at a turtle's pace. They teased the friend that he was killing them, to move it along, good-natured ribbing. They could not have known that Shanda, a colleague of both Doctors Hunter and Brumback in the pathology department, was actually the killer's intended target that day. Further, their friend's slow pace had actually saved their lives. Had they gotten home sooner, they would have likely been murdered. Now it was clear. The connection was Creighton University Medical School, specifically the pathology department. Roger Brumback was chairman. Bill Hunter was in charge of residents. They pulled all residents' files back to 2000. That led them to Dr. Anthony Garcia. Dr. Hunter and Dr. Butra, who was Garcia's pathology professor, were instrumental in Garcia being fired. She described Garcia as, quote, a bad student and a bad guy. She said she pressured Bill Hunter into terminating Garcia's residency. Their signed letter of termination followed him everywhere. Every time he applied for licensure, the letter would pop up. He could not keep a job. So it's July 2013, and detectives track Garcia, now living far away from Omaha, in Terre Haute, Indiana. They feared his murderous spree was not over. An alert Illinois state trooper pulled the fugitive over at 8:30 in the morning. He was drunk when he was arrested, with a crowbar, sledgehammer, and gun. When they traveled to Garcia's home, they found all the motive they needed. He had laid out his diplomas and degrees on the dining table. The termination letter, however, was soaking in the sink. They also found a creepy shopping list containing the following handwritten notations: invade rich house, torture, kill, gun, rich children, kidnap family, SUV, murder. With help from an exotic dancer to whom Garcia confessed his crimes, he was tried and convicted of 4 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. He currently sits on death row in Douglas County, Nebraska. A bronze statue depicting young Thomas Hunter at play was erected on the campus at the Creighton University Medical Center. Number 1. Dr. Richard J. Schmidt. In 1994, Louisiana gastroenterologist Dr. Richard J. Schmidt was nursing his own wounds, a broken heart that accompanied the end of a 10-year relationship with his long-term mistress, Janice Trahan. The pair met in the 1980s when they worked together at a hospital in Lafayette. Dr. Schmidt was a successful doctor by that point, and Janice was a recently graduated nurse. Both were married to other people and had children, so their relationship was strictly professional and platonic at first. Eventually, their friendship turned to romance. They promised to leave their marriages and settle down together. Janice divorced her husband, but Richard wanted to have his cake and eat it too. He remained married to his wife. In 1991, Janice became pregnant with Richard's child. He provided financial support, but little else. Janice had never wanted to be a mistress. She believed the doctor's promises and lies. Eventually, she tired of the arrangement and left him. But he pulled her back in, more than once. He would blackmail her with sexually explicit photos he had taken of her. He would stalk her on dates with other men, often threatening to kill them. After 10 years of sick games, lies, and broken promises, she finally had enough. She ended their relationship permanently. But his ominous threat hung over her like a wet wool blanket. "I'll fix it so no man will want you," he warned. Up to this point, Richard had also been Janice's primary care physician, and he would make regular house calls to administer vitamin B12 shots to boost her energy and combat fatigue. On August 4, 1994, shortly after their breakup, Janice awoke to find Richard standing over her bed with a syringe in his hand. He injected her in the arm like he previously had, but this time she experienced a searing pain like nothing she had ever felt before. She found it odd and certainly didn't want to make any more house calls, but Janice quickly forgot about the incident. Soon, though, she began suffering from a series of odd symptoms and ailments. Her eyes hurt and her lymph nodes were swollen. She went to her gynecologist for a checkup and learned the unthinkable. Janice was HIV positive. She had donated blood a few months before the last B12 injection administered by Dr. Schmidt without her consent. She took her suspicions about Richard and his ominous threat to the district attorney. Of course he was dubious. The idea that a respected physician would deliberately inject someone with, tainted blood, was crazy. He did not believe it. Still, he opened an investigation. When police questioned Richard, he slandered Janice, stating that she was promiscuous and slept around. Of course it was possible, they thought, that she could have become HIV positive by some other means. But in short order, her story started to make sense. Her recent blood donation earlier in the year was clean. She did not have HIV at that time, so the infection was recent. Janice had said Richard called first to advise that he was coming over with the B12. Phone records confirmed he had indeed placed the call. But if he did it, where did he get the tainted blood? They checked his patient's records and learned that Schmidt had obtained a vial of blood belonging to a male patient with full-blown AIDS. The man said Dr. Schmidt had called him out of the blue to conduct a blood test. Schmidt had also obtained the blood of another patient with hepatitis just 2 days before giving Janice the tainted injection. Janice would also contract hepatitis C. The conclusion was both obvious and horrifying. Dr. Richard Schmidt had deliberately infected his former mistress with the means to kill her. So no man would want her, or so he thought. In July 1996, with his wife by his side, Dr. Richard J. Schmidt was charged with attempted murder. He was convicted of attempted second-degree murder on October 23, 1998, and was sentenced to 50 years of hard labor. After serving 17 years, he was unanimously denied parole by the state of Louisiana. As of late 2020, Janice Trahan, now Janice Trahan Allen, was alive and well, treasuring each day with her new husband and family. Well, guys, that's it for me today. I hope you enjoyed this new twisted story. And if you're not already a subscriber, I hope you'll consider joining us here at Scary Clary. I have lots of suspenseful new videos scheduled all the way through Halloween. Until then, have a great day, and I'll catch you next time. Scary Clary out.